when the history of our movement is written, Tim Sweeney is going to be right there at the top.
Tim has always been one who has seen several steps ahead of everyone else.
Look at my brother Tim, if you want to know what a leader is, right? Because I think Tim exemplifies that.
He's so damn smart, so damn charming. You really have to watch out, because this is a guy who'll get you to say yes before you know what hits you.
Whatever the tough issue of the moment was, Tim was in it. And it just really is amazing to me how he stepped in shit and smelled like a rose.
Out of 7 kids, Tim was number 4 son. That's one of the ways that we all got identified. Our parents were very strong Catholics. We grew up all as altar boys. Part of that was instilling in us, at the time, sort of a deep Catholic sense of social justice. My father was a bit of a country lawyer, if you will. He showed us a pretty broad spectrum of people that he interacted with and worked with and respected. My mother was a social worker, and she actually worked for the migrant workers. That was like the demonstration of things that you were supposed to do in terms of helping others.
Tim is very loyal. 45 years is a loyal friend. He is modest. I think his commitment to equality and social justice is something that is a part of his character. We are a product of our parents, and you can certainly see that in Tim.
When he graduated from college, I'd already begun my organizing career. Tim worked for me here on a campaign in Montana in the early 70s, and after that campaign, Tim moved out to California.
When Tim moved to San Francisco, he hates it when I say this, but he was working in a hot dog stand at Fisherman's Wharf. He was looking for people to work in community organizations, and he would try to connect people who he thought would make good staff for a particular organization. Tim wound up organizing community jobs. That took off like crazy. This particular issue has a very famous job ad in it for the position in South Chicago that Barack Obama applied for and got, which is pretty amazing.
After California, Tim went to Boston and worked for Massachusetts Fair Share and really cut his teeth as a community organizer on housing and other social justice issues. And then Tim moved to New York.
Tim and I shared a converted closet space at the ACLU. We were in one office, the tiniest of offices. So we really were like daily contact. We went traveling across the country together, speaking at law schools and to community organizations.
Tim and Roz came to give a talk at Harvard Law School where I was a student. It was actually the first time I realized that one could do gay rights as a profession.
I heard about Tim Sweeney before I met him. He was one of those iconic people, not to mention the fact that he was like one of like 3 people who had a full-time paid job in the movement. The movement was tiny.
By the time I actually came to work at Lambda Legal full-time, Tim was just on his way out and he was moving on to take up leadership at Gay Men's Health Crisis, GMHC.
It was truly some of the worst of times in HIV. People were dying, there was no hope, there were no drugs, there were no answers. There were just more and more and more questions. And here was Gay Men's Health Crisis trying to set up reasonable policies as well as provide social services. While Tim was running all of that, his brother was dying of AIDS.
They were inseparable in a lot of ways. Mark was the more theatrical of the two of them. He came out of the closet very early on in his life, but he showed the way, I think, to Tim to live and be comfortable in his own skin.
Tim did an incredible job of caretaking for my brother Mark. At that time, there were really very few drugs, and Tim was his guardian and did all of the work.
He was living the nightmare personally, and he was living the nightmare professionally. And yet he held his head high and every day trudged to work and every day took care of us.
After my brother Mark died in '95, my folks went to New York for one of the biggest AIDS marches and rallies. I think it was over 2 million people, and they marched in the Gay Pride Parade with Tim at the front of this parade. And it was like one of the most important moments, I think, in my parents' life, to understand the connection between the support they had for their sons and the political support they also had for changing the way people thought about AIDS. Shortly after that, Tim repositioned himself to really get into lobby advocacy work, and he went to work for Empire Pride Agenda and was really effective at doing some important state legislative campaign work.
I remember very well the night when we thought we were almost ready to get the hate crimes bill passed. And I think at that point, Tim had been up about 72 hours straight, back and forth with different legislators, with the governor's office, trying to get it over the final hurdle. He called me about 3 a.m. to say that they'd finally worked out a deal and that we were going to get a hate crimes bill. I was just so happy for us, but so proud of him. It's that kind of dogged work that got that first law in New York to say sexual orientation.
When Tim had made the decision to move out west, we had our celebratory / thank you / farewell / how can you leave us lunch. It was at that very lunch that Tim and I kind of mapped out what became Freedom to Marry. It was Tim who figured out how we make the bridge to the funding world.
I think it was an important time in his life to change careers, and that's when he started working in philanthropy.
When Tim first started here, he really helped us build a new program area for gay equality. Tim was one of the leaders who pulled together the heads of the national gay equality organizations and other key funders in this area and said, we need a game plan. We need to figure this out. We need to look down the road and have a blueprint for winning. And that was a very powerful moment in the movement.
Over the last 5 years of his leadership at Gill Foundation, he has taken such care to bring the needs of the movement to the board, to align what we're doing as grantors with what would really help people.
I think under Tim's leadership, the foundation has honed its mission. It's focused a lot more on some very specific things and gone much deeper.
Tim Sweeney embraced Colorado in a way I think we could only dream of. He fosters creativity and innovation in his employees, but also in partner organizations. And to have the leader of the Gill Foundation represent us in such an amazing way has been profoundly important, and we're extraordinarily thankful.
He manages to pull people together and generate a consensus and build a plan for going forward. And that's one of the reasons that we've come so far in the last 5 years. He should be really proud of his long commitment and what he's accomplished over his tenure.
Every movement needs sprinters. We need lots of them to win our issues, but there are sort of few long-distance runners and who really understand what it takes to win and what it takes to build a movement. I feel like you're one of the best long-distance runners.
Timmy, it's time to come west again, young man.
You've promised to take 6 months off. I think we're all going to hold you to that.
I'm thrilled that you're coming back to San Francisco, obviously.
You've made a deep dent in so many lives.
You've given us all a lifetime of rights and a lifetime of vision.
Thank you for all of your contributions. Thank you for your friendship, and good luck.
While we're waiting for you to come back in somehow, some way, put the weight of the world down. Love. Find love.
I can't imagine that we won't see you in the struggle for civil rights. You'll be there in some way, and I love you.
Tim, you have been a spectacular leader of the foundation. You're thoughtful, you're smart, you're innovative, and you will be incredibly hard for us to replace. Thank you, for working with us.